going to look at now then is how energy, chemical energy, is released inside a cell in order to give your body energy to do exercise. And this is going right back to our first week that we did in this unit, where we talked about cells and the organelles inside a cell. And if you can remember, one of the organelles inside the cell was the one which creates energy, which releases energy. Can anybody remember what that organelle was called? Yeah? The mitochondria. Hoorah! The mitochondria. So the mitochondria in the cell is where this exchange of energy, or this use and breakdown of energy, happens. And it's absolutely essential, because this is how all of the energy for your movement and your activity is generated. Okay? So, what happens inside the mitochondria is that chemical bonds are broken and then made to release energy and then store it up again. And that breaking down and building up of chemical bonds inside molecules is called the acid cycle, and the AT or the ATP cycle. And I'm just going to explain to you now exactly what the ATP cycle is, and I'm going to do it using this diagram. Here we have the little kind of packet of energy, the little sort of packet of energy, or the molecule which is going to release energy. And it is called adenosine phosphate, sorry, not sulfate, phosphate. Right? Adenosine triphosphate, otherwise known as ATP. And what ATP stands for is adenosine triphosphate. Now, molecules have really, really, really complicated names. And actually, what those really, really, really complicated names are made up of is they're made up of the names of the atoms that are in the molecule. The molecule is made up of lots of different atoms. The atoms all have different names, and those names are kind of bunched together to make a name of the molecule. Yes?
Is that a molecule?
So this is a molecule. Yeah. So this is a molecule. Adenosine triphosphate. And what that name, ATP, tells you is that there are these molecules. That's the addy bit. There's oxygen, carbon, hydrogen in that bit. And there is nitrogen. That's the no sign bit. And then there are phosphates, which are made up of phosphorus and oxygen. Okay? That doesn't matter. Don't get hung up on what's in there. The main thing is that this phosphate bit here is a triphosphate. And tri means how many? 3. It means 3. So there are 3 phosphates in there. Okay? Now, when the chemical bond inside the mitochondria, there are lots and lots of these molecules of ATP, adenosine triphosphate, lots of them. And when your cell knows that it needs energy, what happens inside the mitochondria is that these molecules of ATP break down. And when they break down, they release energy. Okay? So what happens with this chemical reaction is that one of the phosphate, the chemical reaction happens, which breaks the bond, breaks that bond there, of the triphosphate and gets rid of it. So if you imagine that that's been dropped to the floor and that phosphate has bounced off. Okay? So it's dropped to the floor and that phosphate bounces off. So what do you have now? It's not tri anymore, it is 2. Do you know what the Latin name for 2 is, or would be? Diphosphate. Tri is 3, di is 2. So now that one has bounced off, that is called adenosine diphosphate because it's just got 2 of those phosphates on the molecule. So, the thing that has happened, if you think about that bouncing to the floor, this one bouncing off, what has happened there? Has that created energy or used energy? It's created energy. If you think about that bouncing off, that creates energy. So that breakdown of this chemical, of this molecule from tri to diphosphate creates energy, it generates energy. And that energy is what is used by your cell to work. Okay? That is a chemical reaction which creates chemical energy, or doesn't create it actually, it releases chemical energy. And it releases the energy of breaking that bond. Now, that energy now can be used by your cell in order to move. So that explains to you why cells such as the heart or muscles have lots and lots of mitochondria in them, because those are organs which are going to need lots and lots of energy. So the cells inside them have lots and lots of mitochondria, so they can produce lots and lots of energy and work hard. Right? So the breaking down from the tri to the diphosphate in the ATP breaks it off and releases energy. Now, your body is going to need to build that back up again in order to be able to make more energy. So the next stage of that acidic cycle is going to build that back up from diphosphate to triphosphate. And in order to build that back up, it uses energy. It doesn't release energy, it needs to get it from somewhere else in order to give it the strength to build back up that bond, to make it from diphosphate back to triphosphate. And in order to do that, your cell needs glucose. Okay? It needs glucose and it needs oxygen as part of that cycle. So if you then look at this slide, what this slide says is adenosine triphosphate, ATP, breaks down into adenosine diphosphate, releasing energy. ADP is then recycled, that diphosphate is recycled to be built up into ATP again, but it needs glucose to do that. Then when your body needs energy again, it's got that little packet of energy in that ATP molecule, so it breaks that bond, gets the energy, and then after that, it builds it up using glucose back to ATP. And that goes on and on and on and on for us to use more, for us to gain more and more energy. And that is what is called the ATP cycle. Okay? That happens inside the cell. So when you see diagrams like that, that is actually what it's showing. We need we get energy inside the cell, it breaks the bonds, it makes ADP, diphosphate, it needs another phosphate to go back to the make ATP to go round and round and round. Right. So that is the ATP cycle. Unfortunately, it's not quite that straightforward. So I'm going to stop there and then move on to the next little bit.